Hi guys. Yeah, obviously Jamie's asked us to give testimony, and I'm not one for public speaking, but I thought this would be the opportunity for me to give my testimony at the church. I've been there 3 years this week, really, this month, but I've never stood up and give my testimony, so I'm going to do it today. Hopefully I can stay within the 10 minutes. I'll try my best, see what happens. I'm sure you can probably have it edited. But yeah, I started, went to Church of England primary school. So obviously God was taught to me from a very young age. My parents weren't really religious or believed in any sort of God. Obviously I came from a broken home, so I didn't really know my dad when I was younger. Lived with my mum and two of my sisters. Went to, let's say, primary school and really didn't doubt God, but didn't know him. And then my mum met a man who's now who I class as my father, my dad, when I was about 4 or 5, and he was a backsliding Christian. Anyway, when I was around about 11, 12, he recommitted his life to God, and we all kind of started seeing he kind of were bringing God into the house, if you will. And he started going to a Baptist church, and I was going to a Church of England church, getting confirmed and doing all that sort of stuff that you do when you're attached to a Church of England. I even rung the bells at the local church for a number of years, but I didn't really take on board the God thing. It was just, you know, it was just there. And then my mum became a Christian, and at her baptism at the age of 11, the penny dropped for me that Christ was real. And I gave my life for the first time at the age of 11. Sad thing is, though, at that time, back in the 80s, there wasn't much going on in the churches for youngsters. Certainly when it came to, you know, really good teaching for kids about the Bible and stuff. So I kind of drifted between church and doing my own thing. And I was one of the lads when I was younger. I played football for the school team and hung out with the lads. So I had a very big pull on me from the world, doing the things that, you know, most people did at a young age, and I got involved in stuff at school that I shouldn't have got involved with. Didn't really work hard at school. Left school at 16, hoping to go in the RAF, but ended up being a butcher, and not really doing much with my faith. Going out at weekends, drinking, got into drugs at a young age, 16. Thankfully, I mean, the drugs that I got into were the social side of drug taking, going clubbing and dancing and all that sort of stuff, and I enjoyed that. I was a pretty good dancer when I was younger, but that was my life. That's what I was doing. But all the while, at the back of my head, there was, you know, God still existed, and I still knew Jesus was my saviour, but I just gave into the temptation of doing things in the world. Anyway, when I got to 19, I had a good few years of partying and doing all that sort of stuff. And got to 19, I went to a church service over in Oswald, and the guy that was preaching about the prodigal son. And obviously, you hear the story of the prodigal son when you're not going to church, and it rings a lot of bells for you. And I ended up recommitting my life, really got stuck in, and within a couple of months I was doing an internship with an organisation called NET, and that was a full year of intense Christianity, really. We slept, ate, drank, spoke Christianity, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. Really got close to God, got a lot of good grounding and a lot of foundation to my faith now was came from that year, really. And I learned a lot of stuff. I did some public speaking, which is not something that I'm comfortable with. That's why you never see me much up the front at church. Did that for a year, really enjoyed it. And then when I left there, again, the pull of the world grabbed a hold of me quite hard this time. And I did spend a good long time backsliding. And I got back into the drugs, more drugs, harder drugs. Spending, you know, a lot of my time clubbing, which is what I did a lot of, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed that sort of life, and I don't look back and say that, you know, it were a mistake or anything like that. It's just what I was into at the time, and, you know, and all the while I never forgot about Jesus. I just didn't have time for him. You know, it was easy to go out on weekends. I was working, I had decent jobs, but it was easy. to turn me back on him and go and do my thing. Didn't go to church much in them times. You know, it was interesting. Always had a job, never didn't work. You know, I always kept myself busy, you know, but I didn't go to church and I wasn't interested in that. But, you know, every night that I was out, you know, I could be on a dance floor and a great gospel tune came on, you know, a good dance tune, and it just reminded me that, you know, Jesus loved me. Even then on the dance floor, he never left me. He never stopped talking to me. I just ignored him, you know, and there was a time, you know, taking pills and snorting cocaine, you know, every time I did one, every time I did a line, it was just, Jesus don't want you to do this. He wants a better life for you, you know, and it's tough, you know. I wasn't addicted, but I love the lifestyle and I enjoyed it so much, you know. But did it give me a fulfillment? Not long term, you know. I mean, obviously you wake up with a hangover or three, but you know, but you're in it, and it's hard to explain. But I went through life. I got married to a girl, and I thought that would be the answer to all my problems, and it just brought me more problems. Even when I was stood at the altar in the church, but you know, but you're in it, and it's hard to explain. But I went through life. I got married to a girl, and I thought that would be the answer to all my problems, and it just brought me more problems. Even when I was stood at the altar in the church, the Holy Spirit were telling me, this isn't for you, this is not what I want for you, I've got other things for you. But I'd ignored him. I still went on with it, and I got married, and it was okay, but it weren't, you know, it weren't going to break any records. And we argued for a lot of years, and there was a lot of heartache in that relationship through miscarriages and things like that, and it was tough. Anyway, we ended up splitting up, and I got divorced. But the last 6 months of that marriage, I started going back to church, and my life changed, and I knew that it were going in a different direction, and that I had to leave that relationship, which I did. And then you know, I started going to church, and I really threw myself back into my faith. And something that I learned around that time was surrender. And I realised at 30 odd years old that I'd been a Christian, or I had a kind of relationship with Jesus, but I'd never ever surrendered myself to him. It was always me before Christ. But now, you know, it's all about surrender, and I've surrendered myself, and I've been seeking his kingdom now for over 12 years, and it's brought me so much. My life's changed. Obviously you can see that I've got a new wife and a great family that brings me so much joy, something I never thought I was gonna get. But it's that getting to know Jesus, surrendering to God, and it brings it. You know, I can look back on my life and say it's not been a bad life, but there's always been something. You know, I've always not let that thing come into my life that could have changed it, which obviously is Jesus. But when I opened the door and I surrendered, he changed it, changed me so much. Listen, I don't get things right now. I'm still hard work. I've still got personality traits that I need to deal with. But you know, being a Christian now, and obviously being older, and knowing that Jesus is my saviour, that we think about what he did at Easter, and I do get emotional about it, because you know, he went to the cross, and the doctor's report. When you sit there and you listen to that, and you think, that's what he did for me. And I'm not worth that, but I am to him. And it's such a great relief to know that regardless of what goes on in life, and we're going through a strange time at the moment, but you know, God, Jesus is our strength. And there's people out there freaking out, you know, and wondering what could be going on, and you know, we don't have that worry. We don't worry. You know, I've been through cancer, and I didn't worry one bit. It was devastating when I got the news, but you know, when God says, you know, you ask for God, you know, you want a healing, and God says, I'm not going to heal you of your kidney disease because it's your fault that you've got it because of your misspent youth. But what he did do is he took me through a very quick physical healing process, which was the message, that he wanted to use that for me to for people to see that I put so much in reliance in him at that time that it didn't affect me emotionally in a way that a lot of people are, and I got through it, and I healed very quickly. I was back at work very quickly. You know, that's one of the big things, probably the biggest thing in my life that God's really stood by me for. And here I am today, you know, at a church that I think is great. It's really supportive. We get some good teaching, and I would just say to anybody that, you know, he's thinking or he's struggling with the faith to really think about plugging in. Once all this silliness is over with the coronavirus, you know, get yourself plugged into the church. Some good people here. You get some good teaching, and you'll be directed in the right direction. You won't be pushed, you won't be controlled, you'll be directed in some great places, so you'll get to know the Lord yourself. I've done over 10 minutes there, so I better sign off, but thanks for listening, guys. Bye.